It's Monday and it's the Day of the Dragon over here at Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and we are back with another lore breakdown. Now, if this is your first time joining the show, I say thank you for listening, and how we do things here on Countdown to Classic is we hear from you. Yes, you, the players of World of Warcraft, as it's not my opinion that counts, but yours. The first 45 minutes or so of this show is story time, as I read out a collation of entries that you can find at the amazing Wowpedia and WowWiki websites. However, if you're not much of a lore buff, or you want to read those entries in your own time, then please feel free to skip ahead to the second half of the episode, where we'll go through community reactions to the content from back in the day and get through a bit of fun with regular segments, anger management, and tidbits. Just to let you all know, if you have any comments on what you're about to hear and you want your input possibly read out on the show, then email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com or call into the show on a Friday or Saturday night Eastern Standard Time. And also please keep those memory lane and anger management submissions coming, people. Please do check the show notes for all the social links where you can find ways in which to engage with both myself and fellow listeners of the show, of which there are many of you now, as the show continues to break previous records each week, and we hit almost spot on 10,000 downloads this past week. So thank you so much to everyone for listening in. But for now, let's get to the lore with a scoop of vanilla. The dragon aspects, also called great aspects, aspects of Azeroth, or simply aspects, are the leaders of the 5 dragonflights, being Neltharion, black dragonflight, Malygos, blue dragonflight, Nozdormu, bronze dragonflight, Ysera, green dragonflight, and Alexstrasza, the red dragonflight. They were empowered by the Titans to protect Azeroth. So, how did this important appointment by the Titans, who we've lightly heard about before on the show, come to pass? Well, before they were dragons, the aspects were proto-dragons. Proto-dragons were the feral, long-forgotten forebears of the dragon species. The proto-dragons descend from elementals who avoided being imprisoned in the elemental plane and instead remained on Azeroth, where some of them gradually transformed into creatures of flesh and blood. Proto-dragons may have origins in elemental drakes, such as stone and storm drakes. The proto-dragons are thus early versions of dragons, before they evolved into the sapient, beautiful, majestic creatures they are known as today. The proto-dragons lived relatively peaceful lives within their clutches, being a brood of kinds, hunting and competing with other proto-dragons for caribou amongst the wilds of ancient Azeroth. They stood united against a bloodthirsty monster who threatened their race, the father of dragons, known as Galakrond, not to be confused with that mother of dragons from somewhere else. But anyway, Galakrond was a massive proto-dragon, also known as the progenitor of dragonkind. He once hunted with his fellow proto-dragons and was seen as benevolent, but suddenly changed and became a terror that caused the other proto-dragons in prehistoric Azeroth to fear him. While the proto-dragons did not know what caused the change in Galakrond, Watcher Tyr, the mightiest of the Titan Watchers, made vague statements implying that he is at fault for Galakrond's actions and mutations, as things did not go according to Tyr's plan through this time. One day, when one of her clutch brothers went missing, a proto-dragon named Alexstrasza searched to find him and met with Malygos. The two were attacked by a savage grey proto-dragon, and though they fought it off, Alexstrasza noted that it appeared to be frightened of something else. Alexstrasza and Malygos would eventually find her brother. Tragically, however, he was dead, nothing more than a shriveled husk of flesh and bone. Sometime later, dozens of proto-dragons were hunting caribou. Alexstrasza and her younger sister, Ysera, included. While Alexstrasza would offer Ysera her kills, Ysera declined. Ysera approached Malygos to ask him about her brother's corpse, which Malygos had found alongside Alexstrasza. She said that there was yet another corpse she and Alexstrasza had found elsewhere, though Alexstrasza reprimanded her, saying they had agreed not to speak of that. The two argued, but they were interrupted by the sudden appearance of Galakrond. Galakrond took their prey, terrifying some of the proto-dragons. The blue-white proto-dragon Malygos was curious as to why Galakrond would hunt in that area when he never had before, to which Malygos's new friend Neltharion responded that there was just more food there. Malygos, however, was quick to point out that the food was their food. Malygos and Neltharion had recently become relatively friendly around the time of this event, as Malygos had been having some issues with Koros, a proto-dragon of blue-green coloration and an old rival of Malygos's, with whom he had competed in the past over kills, territory, and strength. Neltharion came across Koros and two of his companions attacking Malygos, and though outnumbered, the confident Neltharion came to Malygos's aid, and since that day established a friendship between the two and drove Koros and his companions off. But back to this day, after the gigantic terror that was Galakrond had flown away, the ever-confident Neltharion taunted them all for being afraid. Ysera and Alexstrasza would later come across the shriveled-up corpses of two proto-dragons, including Malygos's old companion, Taris. A small and terrified purple proto-dragon insisted that Galakrond had devoured the dead dragons, which matched theories Malygos had expressed to the two sisters. They went to fetch Malygos so he could meet the purple dragon. After his arrival, the corpses stirred and attacked as undead. Alexstrasza, Malygos, and Ysera tore them apart. Galakrond began to focus on this new food source of his own brethren, and his size began to grow greater than all of the aspects combined, even though they weren't aspects yet, but you know what I mean. He grew large enough that the only possible being Galakrond could be compared to was himself. His roar could be heard from miles around, and the flap of his wings generated powerful wind. As he continued to consume the life energies of his fellow proto-dragons, Galakrond grew hideous mutations all over his body, such as limbs and even eyes, and his skin started to decay, almost as if he had become an undead like his victims. Galakrond was not always this large, and he used to have a smoother, more streamlined appearance. At Galakrond's command, the not living, what they had begun to term his victims, hunted their living counterparts and infected those that they bit. After this revelation that Galakrond was partaking in the unthinkable, cannibalism, and that his victims were prone to arising as undead attackers, the other proto-dragons rallied together under the command of the golden proto-dragon and chosen alpha of the proto-dragons, Talanixa, in order to address this new threat to their being that was Galakrond. Talonyxa was larger than most proto-dragons, with only Neltharion and a few others being bigger. Talonyxa was commanding and cunning, and Malygos did not quite trust her. Her mate, Zorix, had also fallen victim to Galakrond's new tastes, and Talonyxa quickly encouraged the other proto-dragons to destroy Galakrond and the undead proto-dragons that now seemed to follow him, which, as I said, they had now dubbed the Not Living. She, being Talonyxa, was noticed to have given Koros some favour, as evidenced by her allowing him to hunt with her, and Koros appeared to have some sway over her, as evidenced by him convincing her to allow Ysera to speak her belief of peace with Galakrond with the other dragons. Vehemently disagreeing with Ysera upon the idea of peace, Talonyxa was able to quickly rally the majority of the proto-dragons to her side. Despite seemingly to agree with Talonyxa that the proto-dragons should rally and destroy Galakrond, Koros encouraged Ysera, who grew more vehement in her distaste for violence, in preaching her belief of peace to the other dragons. Alexstrasza knew that fighting was the only option. However, she vowed to not fight like Talonyxa. When Ysera was given a chance to speak her idea of peace, Alexstrasza was worried about Talonyxa's reaction. However, while Ysera seemed to seek a return to the status quo, Koros preached in finding a way to live under the rule of Galakrond. While Ysera attempted to convince Talonyxa to seek peace, Koros came and went with the crowd, as he initially did not stand by Ysera, which enraged Alexstrasza. However, Malygos noted that if Ysera began convincing the majority, Koros would suddenly again appear beside her. At some point during this meeting, Koros and his companions vanished, and following the meeting's end, an uneasy Malygos began to search out for them. After locating his rival, Malygos discovered to his shock that Koros, in an attempt to gain protection from Galakrond, had started to emulate him by practicing cannibalism and encouraged his companions to do the same, thinking that this may curry favour with Galakrond. After being attacked and killing one of Koros's companions, Malygos continued to secretly follow Koros, and while hidden, bore witness to Koros betraying the rest of the proto-dragons by meeting with Galakrond in secret and informing him of the time and place that Talonyxa decided that the proto-dragon army would venture forth and attack Galakrond. Seemingly pleased with this information and the thought of the feast that he would have, Galakrond flew off, seemingly sparing Koros and his fellow cohorts. However, Galakrond quickly returned when Koros and his remaining companions took flight and devoured one of them, while Koros rammed the other one of his compatriots to try and buy himself some time to escape. But it was to no avail, as Galakrond gave chase, perhaps viewing Koros as a threat, simply wanting to sate his hunger, or both, and devoured the smaller dragon. Witnessing Koros's betrayal and subsequent devourment by Galakrond, Malygos would return to the others, only to find Ysera and Talonyxa in conflict over the fate of the bitten proto-dragons who had begun to act like Galakrond. Alexstrasza found herself agreeing with Talonyxa over the issue. Seeming to agree with Ysera's desire for them to still live, Talonyxa decreed that the bitten would have to be quarantined for the safety of everyone else. Alexstrasza watched the bitten dragons be herded into a canyon. She was shocked to see Talonyxa collapse it, killing all of those trapped inside. Despite receiving news of Koros' betrayal and death by Galakrond, Talanixa did not hesitate still to carry out her planned attack against Galakrond. And she had successfully swayed the other proto-dragons around to her argument for taking on the mighty Galakrond. And so Talanixa led a charge against Galakrond. After hearing him roar, but not seeing him appear, this caused Talanixa to boast her belief that the great behemoth was too afraid to face her and the rest of the proto-dragons. Before the proto-dragon army engaged their enemy in battle, Malygos devised a plan in which the army would fly higher in the air, where Galakrond could not fly. Quickly informing Talanixa of his plan, Malygos was relieved to note that she was considering it. However, hearing his sigh, Talanixa took that as a sign of Malygos' satisfaction of her bowing to his wisdom, and engaged Malygos in battle. While Nozdormu, another proto-drake, and Neltharion were quick to help Malygos, Talanixa was helped by her two lieutenants. Despite Nozdormu encouraging a retreat, Neltharion openly called for Malygos to fight Talanixa and become the new Alpha, an action which enraged Talanixa and brought more of her followers to join her, which caused the trio to flee high into the air. Galakrond wound up joining the battle, and at one point Alexstrasza wound up saving her sister Ysera after Ysera was still trying to plead for peace, even as the proto-dragon army fought the not living and Galakrond had arrived on the scene. Talanixa was quick to lead her followers into this battle against Galakrond. Becoming consumed with utter madness, Talanixa, rather than being tempted to flee Galakrond's missed attack, instead flew further into it in order to attack her foe. This ultimately proved to be her undoing, as Galakrond bit into her as she turned to flee. Fighting against her inevitable death, Talanixa tried in vain to save herself before Galakrond chomped down and split her in half. An unknown time later, Tyr met with the 5 proto-dragons, Alexstrasza, Ysera, Neltharion, Nozdormu, and Malygos, who had shown a bit of bravery earlier, informing them that Galakrond was sleeping in a mountain range to the north, and that it was the perfect time to attack. After eating and gathering their strength, Tyr and the others met up near Galakrond's place of slumber, and began an assault on the behemoth. During the course of the battle, Tyr's hammer and his spark of Tyr were knocked free from his person, and as he reached out to grab the spark, Galakrond's massive maw came within range and wound up claiming both the artifact and Tyr's hand. Pleased by his victory and being further mutated as a result, Galakrond did not even notice his enemies retreating. After regaining his senses, Galakrond found himself unable to find prey as the living proto-dragons had become adept at hiding from him now. With his hunger ever growing, Galakrond, in a move that stunned and surprised the future aspects, began to devour his own not living, as they were the only thing that would not hide from him. Despite his hunger, Galakrond was able to show restraint by keeping enough not living to serve as a scouting force to hunt down his preferred prey, the living proto-dragons. Galakrond and his remaining not living forces would eventually be attacked by the future aspects in what would become known as the Dragon Blight. During this battle, Malygos would come to lodge a boulder in Galakrond's throat, an action which caused Galakrond to focus his attention on dislodging the boulder instead of fending off his assailants. This lapse in concentration also forced him to release his hold on the remaining not living, who then began to attack one another. Despite his best efforts to dislodge the boulder from his throat, Malygos' frost breath would force the boulder to remain in place, and the boulder would ultimately be lodged further down the great beast's throat, while Neltharion blasted a knot living into Galakrond's throat, causing Galakrond to ultimately choke to death. Because of the courage shown by the 5 proto-dragons who took down Galakrond, Tyr suggested to the other Titan keepers to empower them and make them defenders of Azeroth, as they proved they were able to stand for the planet. Fellow Watcher Odin disagreed and forbid the other keepers to proceed with that idea, but they decided to go against him and do it anyway. They reached out to the Pantheon, the Titan High Council, and each of the Titans blessed the proto-dragons with a portion of their vast power, channeled through the Keepers. The dragonflights were thus charged with the task of watching over Azeroth, lest any force should threaten its perfect tranquility. They became majestic beings called dragons, and were known as the Aspects. However, mortals are told that the Aspects were created from Galakrond. This is a rumor spread by the Aspects themselves in order to prevent proto-dragons and dragons from doing the same thing that Galakrond did and becoming immeasurably powerful and mad. The Titans empowered the 5 dragons, each with specific powers, to lead their own respective dragonflights and watch over Azeroth and its evolution. Aman'Thul, the High Father of the Pantheon, charged the bronze dragon Nozdormu with guarding over time itself and police the ever-spinning pathways of fate and destiny. Ionar, the Titan patron of all life, blessed both the red dragon Alexstrasza and her younger sister, the green dragon Ysera, so that they would safeguard all living creatures and watch over the growing wilds of the world, respectively. Norgannon, the Titan lawkeeper and master magician, made the blue dragon Malygos the guardian of magic and hidden arcanum. Khaz'gorath, the Titan shaper and forger of the worlds, gave the black dragon Neltharion dominion over the earth and the deep places of the world. According to legends, when the Aspects were first created, the moons had been in a rare conjunction known as the Embrace. A repeat of this same alignment was crucial to the proper working of the magic necessary to turn a normal dragon into an Aspect. So now that we've got their names and we now know how they came to be, let's hear a bit more about the stories of each of the 5 dragon aspects as they somewhat went their separate ways after being made aspects. Just a note, I won't be touching too much on the history of the dragonflights per se, but it's fair to say that for the most part they did what their leaders did. But there's a little bit more to it, but the dragonflights might be covered in another episode later down the track. But for now, let's tear through these dragon aspects one by one. And in going through this lore, there's a few little things I won't touch on, such as the dragon aspect's involvement in the War of the Shifting Sands, as we've heard already on the show, the Winterscorn War, which was a brief little thing with the Titans that wasn't overly interesting or deep. And also, I know about the issues with timelines sort of being all over the place, potentially once Nozdormu and the Caverns of Time get involved, but hopefully this all sticks mostly to vanilla-esque content, and if I do muck it up, please do let me know and I'll try to set the record straight on a future episode. But for now, here we go, and we'll start with Alexstrasza. Alexstrasza, the Lifebinder, aspect of the red dragonflight, is the guardian of all life in the world of Azeroth, watching over Azeroth and its inhabitants. The Titans also appointed her Queen of all Dragons. During the time of Galakrond, Alexstrasza, her brother Dralad, and her younger sister Ysera were the only 3 survivors of their clutch. Ysera was sick and smaller than average, and Alexstrasza watched out for her. Alexstrasza was one of the more intelligent proto-dragons, capable of broken speech, unlike most of the other, more animal-like of her kind. For some time after, she and her fellow red dragons were at peace, but over time they began to argue about how best to shelter and protect the world. The rise to power of humans and other races left many believing that these new people were dangerous and should maybe be destroyed, while others of Alexstrasza's ilk felt that they should be educated to teach them right from wrong. While her consorts and children continued to have their impact on Azeroth, Alexstrasza's whereabouts were, until recently, unknown to most. And when I say recently, I'm not actually 100% sure when that recently is. I'm sure some of you will know. But Tyrande Whisperwind seemed to know where she was the whole time. Alexstrasza is known to be a kind and patient mentor. Under her tutelage, only the most dedicated pupils acquire the title of Lifebinder's Handmaiden. She prefers peace and solitude, although she will defend her lands with all of her power against any who threaten them without due cause. She often uses her shape change power to appear as a creature of nature, in order to see what encroaching mortals will do before revealing her presence. Alexstrasza is devoted to all forests, and to a lesser extent, all other types of green and fertile growing things. She considers all natural woodlands her home, and she need fear no beast within such lands. Although many of Azeroth's natural creatures revere the great red Leviathan, she is not a goddess, and does not pretend to be otherwise. Alexstrasza is rarely venerated by any particular group, although some elven communities pay her homage. Druids of the Wild in particular appreciate her serene presence, considering her second in importance only to Ysera. The Dragon Queen possesses magics over all life. In the past, she's used Great Fire, used to incinerate undead and rebirth fresh new life in their place. Cleansing the body in favor of life anew is well within Alexstrasza's grasp. However, removing the plague of undeath without affecting the body is beyond the scope of the powers that she controls. Among Alexstrasza's abilities, she can regrow forests and heal the land. She can animate the dead and resurrect, as evidenced later on with Bolvar Fordragon. In Blackwing Lair, Valestraz calls upon the power of Alexstrasza to aid the raid group in defeating his corrupted form. The raid is then given a buff called Essence of the Red, which essentially grants infinite mana, rage, runic power, and energy for 3 minutes. Nozdormu the Timeless One, aspect of the Bronze Dragonflight and guardian of time. After the War of the Ancients, he retreated into seclusion, immersing himself in his duties and kind of traveling through timelines, protecting us from Back to the Future-esque problems. He emerges only infrequently when events require his direct presence. And weirdly, that's all I could find on Nozdormu. He's truly mysterious in a way. And I know he does come into it a bit more in the expansions, but I couldn't find too much. I found that a bit strange. Anyway, Malygos. Malygos was the aspect of the blue dragonflight and one of the most ancient creatures living on Azeroth and the eldest of the aspects. Norgannon, the Titan Master Magician and Keeper of Law, granted Malygos a portion of his vast power, as we heard. From then on, Malygos would be known as the Spellweaver, the guardian of arcane magic and hidden arcanum. He was one of only a handful of beings who were alive at the time the Titans departed. Malygos was a leviathan with small wings. His body was covered with crystalline scales of pure azure. His body shone with shifting colors that changed constantly from blue to silver. Malygos was the oldest of the 5 aspects. He was also one of the more intelligent proto-dragons, again capable of broken speech, unlike most of the others. When he was younger, he and another proto-dragon named Taris, who we heard before, were especially close. Malygos, the Lord of Magic, is said to have created magic and spells. His command of magic is quite impressive, rivaling that of a demigod, although he does not aspire to have such power. While physically he's not as powerful as some of the other aspects, Malygos counters this disadvantage with his phenomenal command of magic. Before the War of the Ancients, Malygos was described to often appear with an amused expression on his face. While physically dragons can't smile, it appeared he often walked around with a smirk. He is said to have had a sense of humour and an optimistic personality, enjoying using magic and illusions to entertain audiences. Like most of his kind, Malygos is a solitary creature who avoids contact with others. He dwells in Northrend, in a lair filled with some of his greatest magical artifacts known to exist. He spends his days studying magic, refining his abilities, and studying the various planes of the multiverse both remotely and in person, while his few remaining children scour the world for ancient artifacts and repositories of arcane power. Malygos does not seek out combat, and although he and his dragonflight are still routinely hunted by black dragons, he avoids their kind if at all possible. He protects his lair and himself with illusions and misdirection. Those who discover his home are encouraged to depart through a variety of means. Malygos takes direct action only as a last resort. When he does fight, he engages spellcasters first, using his breath weapon and other abilities to sweep spells from their minds. As a young proto-dragon, Malygos was very prideful of his abilities. He proudly declared his intelligence and looked at more animal-like proto-dragons with a bit of contempt. It wasn't just talk either, as it was Malygos who found a connection between the shriveled proto-dragon corpses and Galakrond, as we heard earlier. Ysera. Ysera is the dragon aspect of the green dragonflight, charged with keeping watch over the flowering wilds of Azeroth from within the Emerald Dream. Bound to this ethereal realm, she descended into an endless trance and became known thereafter as the Dreamer. Ysera is also the foster mother of the demigod Cenarius. Ysera was one of the more intelligent proto-dragons, and I'm sure you're seeing a bit of a theme here with the aspects. Capable of, again, broken speech unlike most of the other proto-dragons. Born smaller than the average proto-drake, Ysera was sick and a yellowish colour. She and her two siblings, Alexstrasza and Dralad, were the only two survivors of their clutch. Again, we heard that one. While someone as small as Ysera would normally be killed soon after hatching, Alexstrasza kept care of her little sister. Sometime before the events of World of Warcraft, Ysera learned about the plans of Atal-Ai and Hakari to summon Hakar into Azeroth in the temple of Atal-Hakar, and destroyed the temple, sending him beneath the water. Ysera fell silent when the Emerald Nightmare began, and some of her most trusted lieutenants, such as Lethon, Emerus, Teyra, and Isondre, were warped by a dark power within the Emerald Dream. Ysera is green, and her skin glitters with countless emeralds for scales. Her physical form is ghostly, ethereal, like watching a living dream or vision. The Emerald Dream is a place where all living beings dream when sleeping. It's a place of where sentient beings have dreams of hope and faith for a better tomorrow. From the Emerald Dream, Ysera can observe all lesser races. Her eyes are always closed, although you can see her pupils move constantly below her eyelids, as if watching many dreams at once. There are only a few recorded moments in history where Ysera has opened her eyes. When she does, a person can see eyes of many colors, like a rainbow. The eyes of every sentient creature can be seen at once through hers. Ysera opened her eyes during the War of the Ancients after seeing Malorn dead, and again when addressing Malfurion Stormrage on his druidic prowess. She opened them another time during the Second War, before Krasus, when he tried to convince her to help free Alexstrasza. Ysera also opened her eyes after she regained her powers during the fight against Deathwing. Ysera fought alongside the other dragon aspects against the evil of Deathwing, while Ronan destroyed the Demon Soul. She regained her full powers once the Demon Soul was destroyed, and that story is told in the novel Day of the Dragon. Ysera can assume the form of a female from any race, which she chooses depending on whom she's talking to. Often she wears a dress of emerald green, emerald jewelry, and has emerald green hair. Ysera avoids and dislikes combat, especially in her realm. When angered, she is terrible, paranoid, and impulsive. She keeps herself isolated in the eye of Ysera within the Emerald Dream, and is rarely seen in the real world. When she does visit the living plane, she shapeshifts into a humanoid form, covered by a green hood, and her eyes are always closed. When in combat, she attacks with a greenish breath, which Malygos recalled as a breath weapon akin to that of Galakron's, if not as debilitating. This breath puts her opponents to sleep, and she rarely strikes to kill. She prefers to neutralize her enemies and banish them away from her realm. Ysera can travel from minds to travel anywhere she wishes by entering the dreams of any living being sleeping. She may enter the dreams of a target to communicate with or warn the sleeping creature. Ysera has the ability to plane shift between the real world and the Emerald Dream. Finally, Neltharion. And what I'm going to do now for you lucky fans, just because you said you somewhat enjoyed it last time when I did a little bit of voice acting on the show, I'm going to try my hand at a bit more voice acting. And I just wanted to introduce Neltharion with one of his more famous quotes after he became Deathwing. And spoiler alert, yes, he becomes Deathwing. I'm about to tell you all about it. So please don't laugh at me too much. Here we go.
Pain, agony, my hatred burns through the cavernous deeps. The world heaves with my torment. Its wretched kingdoms quake beneath my rage. But at last, the whole of Azeroth will break. And all will burn beneath the shadow of my wings.
Whew. All right, there, you got your voice acting out of me. You happy, everyone? I know a few of you do enjoy that. I'll try and get it in every now and again, and if you didn't like it, I apologize, but it only is a small portion of the show, so you can just handle it. Anyway, let's talk about Neltharion the Earthwarder. And obviously, I just read out a quote from Neltharion a little bit later in his life when he becomes known as a certain other title. But Neltharion, leader of the Black Dragonflight. Neltharion was originally the mighty black worm chosen as the caretaker of the continents of Azeroth, with domain over the earth and the deep places of the world. He used his power with wisdom and benevolence, forging mountains and rivers for the benefit of mortal races. His lair was located in a mountainous region near the Night Elf city of Suramar, where he stored one of the pillars of creation, the Hammer of Khazgorath. The shamanistic, cave-dwelling Drogbar served him. In peaceful times, Neltharion was renowned for his wisdom and power, and became known as Neltharion the Earthwarder, a great protector of the land. Malygos the Spellweaver, the aspect of magic that we just heard about, was his closest friend. In spite of this, Neltharion silently chafed at what he felt was a burden that had been inflicted on him. Though he could command the entire weight of Azeroth itself, that same weight constantly pressed on on his body every waking moment, the load making him feel suffocated to the point that he felt his very spirit unraveling. Neltharion believed that he must bear this burden alone, but ultimately found it to be too much and began to resent the charge placed upon him. The belief that the Titans viewed Azeroth as an experiment only fueled his bitterness. Then came the madness that destroyed Neltharion's mind, changing him and his kind forever, and leading to the creation of the powerful item known as the Dragon Soul, later the Demon Soul. The inner voices of the old gods convinced him that he could have power beyond his imagination if he served them. The voices made him paranoid of even his own black dragonflight. Neltharion began to yearn for a world dominated by his black dragonflight, a world in which the other dragonflights ceased to exist, and Ysera and Alexstrasza would be his petty slaves for mating. The old gods convinced Neltharion to create the Dragon Soul. With the help of goblin servants led by Meklo, Neltharion created a simple golden disc made of his blood and forged in the goblins' cauldrons and anvils deep beneath the earth. Empowered by Neltharion's magic, the simple disc was magically shielded so that the other dragon aspects could not see within it. There was an evil within the disc, some taint of the old gods, though its exact nature is not known. Neltharion had the Drogbar experiment with ways to merge the elements into a binding ore. He believed it would be the ultimate tool in his rise to power. When the Burning Legion entered Azeroth during the War of the Ancients, Neltharion saw the opportunity to complete his Dragon Soul. Guided by the voices of the old gods, he first captured demons of the Burning Legion and added their powers to the Dragon Soul. The great aspects congregated at the lair of Alexstrasza to discuss the coming invasion and what part they should play in defending the world. Neltharion proposed that to end the invasion of demons, the Dragonflights should create a weapon with which they could eradicate the demon armies. All of them agreed to give a portion of their powers to the Dragon Soul, including all dragons of their dragonflights. Neltharion proposed that the Dragon Soul disc could be a weapon of great power to destroy the demons of the Burning Legion. Unknown to the rest, Neltharion was the only one who did not give his powers to the Dragon Soul. Dun dun dun. And they had just assisted him in gaining power and dominion over all of their kind. Neltharion, the dragon aspects, and their dragonflights flew towards Zin Azshari, where the Night Elves held the demons at bay. The dragons awaited Neltharion's first attack. He grabbed the Dragon Soul and, by channeling his destructive power through it, destroyed thousands of demons in one fell swoop with his radiant magic. The dragon aspects watched in horror as Neltharion also killed hundreds of Night Elves and other allies along with the demons. Neltharion revealed the depths of his betrayal at last. Now, with the disc at his command, he wanted all races and the demons to see his power and to bow before him. The dragon aspects attacked Neltharion in an attempt to take the Dragon Soul from him and to reason with him in hopes of determining the cause of his perfidy. Malygos's blue dragonflight surrounded Neltharion, but with a swing of the Dragon Soul, most of the blue dragons perished. The next swing of the Dragon Soul paralyzed all dragonflights and the dragon aspects in mid-air, rendering them unable to move or speak. Neltharion then struck out at the dragon aspects and their dragonflights, destroying many and scattering them far across the land. Neltharion's betrayal struck a great blow to the aspects, and their fear of being destroyed like the blue dragonflight kept them in seclusion. In desperation, the aspects shielded themselves and hid to become undetected even by each other. With his flight nearly annihilated, Malygos began to lose his mind. He felt deep guilt for his role in convincing the other aspects to infuse their powers into the demon soul. He travelled to his lair in Northrend, where he hid for millennia. Feelings of remorse paralysed him. During the 10,000 years following the War of the Ancients, he was rarely seen by the other aspects. His body was a caricature of his former self, almost always being in the form of an insect-like creature, a thin body surrounded by frozen ice, almost skeletal. Nozdormu was missing through the War of the Ancients because he was trapped in a time anomaly caused by the old gods. During the war, Nozdormu's interests were represented by his mate, Soridormi. I think that's how you pronounce it. At the end of the war, upon the destruction of the Burning Legion's portal and the halting of the old god's attempt to escape, Nozdormu was freed from his entrapment. He assisted the other dragon aspects with the creation of the world tree Nordrasil. Alexstrasza had planted a magical acorn from the mother tree Agani within the second well of eternity created by Illidan. The tree grew large till it reached the heavens and was crowned Nordrasil. Ysera enchanted the tree so that it would be bound to the Emerald Dream. Nozdormu also placed an enchantment upon it to ensure that as long as the colossal tree stood, the Night Elves would never age past their prime. Despite these enchantments, however, none of the dragon aspects actually granted the new world tree their blessing, whatever that might mean. Now, back to old Neltharion. The growing corruption in Neltharion's heart warped his body, as the angelic dragon began taking a more demonic appearance, similar to how Sargeras changed to a more demonic form after his corruption. Neltharion's body cracked open, revealing his molten heart, and magma and fire flowed off his chest. His eyes became a flame in red, demonstrating the magnitude of his power and the depths of his evil. Neltharion felt every rock in Azeroth pressed down on him. His body splintered and cracked. It was beyond physical agony. His spirit was unraveling, suffocated by the unfathomable load. He saw it as a life of eternal torment. However, with it came an incredible strength, as the weight of Azeroth was his to command. Thus was Deathwing the Destroyer born, and the Dragon Soul, as we heard, was renamed to the Demon Soul. Deathwing returned to his lair in what would later be known as High Mountain. His proximity to the Demon Soul was ripping his body apart, so goblin smiths forged an armor of adamantium steel to serve as a vessel to contain Deathwing's raging powers and keep them in check, which were then placed on his body by the Drogbar whom he had enslaved. Only the adamantium plates kept the power from destroying his body. The old gods had manipulated Deathwing into creating the Demon Soul, but their true intention was that the demons would inform their lord Sargeras of the great power of the weapon used against them. Sargeras would no doubt want the Demon Soul to power the gateway that would let him enter Azeroth. By using the Demon Soul to amplify the gateway, the three old gods hoped to escape their prison beneath the planet. However, Malfurion Stormrage used the Emerald Dream to find Deathwing's lair and stole the Demon Soul from the Black Dragon, who tried to pursue the thief in vain. Illidan and Varathen captured Malfurion and took the Demon Soul back to Zin Azshari, to Manaroth the Destructor, the general of the Legion's armies. It was used to power up the portal that would allow Sargeras to enter Azeroth. Deathwing tried one last time to recover the disc, when it was being used by both Sargeras and the old gods, and actually succeeded in reaching it. Deathwing was almost destroyed in the attempt, but after he got the Demon Soul, an enormous surge of power made him lose his grip on the disc, and sent him spiraling far away from the portal. Shortly afterwards, an incarnation of Nozdormu from millennia later prevented the soul from falling into the well below, and brought it with him back to the future. After the Burning Legion was defeated and the Demon Soul returned from the future, the dragon aspects sealed the artifact with their energies so that Deathwing should never be able to manipulate the Demon Soul. The artifact was hidden in an undisclosed location by Malfurion at the request of the dragon aspects. No longer in possession of the artifact and now unable to use it, Deathwing vowed to destroy most life and to wreak havoc on the planet. With his powers over Earth, Neltharion caused volcanoes to rise along with the destruction already caused by the Well of Eternity's implosion, sinking most of Kalimdor below the ocean. He himself chose Deathwing as his title to better show his contempt and intentions for the lesser creatures around him. After the war, Deathwing retreated to Neltharion's vault near his lair in the mountainous region, which had recently been named High Mountain by the Tauren living there in honor of the hero Huln High Mountain. Huln and an uprising of Deathwing's Drogbar slaves battled the Earthwarder, and with the Hammer of Khaz'goroth, Huln banished Deathwing from the land, sending him to Deepholm. After Deathwing returned to Azeroth, he settled into a deep slumber. He needed time to recover from his wounds caused by the Demon Soul and to regain his strength. During his long slumber, the other dragonflights would hunt his corrupted black dragonflight to the brink of extinction. 10,000 years later, the dark portal between Azeroth and Draenor was opened by Medivh and Gul'dan. The incredible amount of magic roused Deathwing from his slumber. He watched with fascination as Stormwind and the Horde fought, and he became convinced that the Orcs would be the means to restore his flight to its full glory. However, he knew the other dragon aspects in the mortal races would oppose him if he came out of hiding. If the Horde could break Azeroth's kingdoms, Deathwing could devote his full attention to fending off the aspects. During the First War, Deathwing's old god masters urged him to take small steps to aid the Orcs. He did nothing drastic for fear of attracting the aspects' attention, yet the old gods saw Deathwing's intervention as a way to engulf the world in chaos. The first thing Deathwing did was take the guise of a noble human from Stormwind and travel to Lordaeron. He charmed the aristocracy, and when stories of the Horde invasion finally reached Lordaeron, Deathwing openly scoffed at them. He told Lordaeron's nobles that the tales were fabrications, meant to hide growing problems with rebels in Stormwind, and his lies were much more convincing than Stormwind's desperate pleas for help. To win over those who stubbornly believed the reports, Deathwing subtly influenced the minds of Lordaeron's nobles with his magic, preventing them from taking any action against the Horde. Deathwing did not only involve himself with human affairs either. Once he was certain Lordaeron would not send aid to Stormwind, Deathwing moved south. He took the form of a Blackrock Orc and lived among the Orcs for months, examining their society from the inside. He had easily sensed the hidden power driving the Horde's actions, and before long, Deathwing maneuvered himself into the good graces of several individuals. Gul'dan believed Deathwing's Orc disguise to be a loyal follower. Blackhand believed him to be a proud Blackrock Orc, and Orgrim Doomhammer believed he was a stalwart ally. When Blackhand fell to Orgrim, Deathwing did not see it as an issue. As a servant of the old gods, he saw the shattering of the Burning Legion's hold on the Orcs as a good thing that only served to make them more vulnerable to his own masters. But there was a problem with Deathwing's plans. The Horde had been weakened by the First War, and if the rest of the human kingdoms were to unite, the Orcs would not have the means to destroy them. Even if they could, they would awaken too many enemies in the meantime. If the dragon aspects learned about the Horde, the Orcs would stand no chance. However, Deathwing's dragon soul was still out there, having been hidden after the War of the Ancients. It contained the power of all the aspects except Deathwing, so could be used against them for destruction or control. And although the weapon had been enchanted after the war so that no dragon could wield it, Orcs could. Deathwing granted visions to Zuluhead the Whacked, chieftain of the Dragonmaw clan. He was bombarded with vivid dreams of his clan taming and riding dragons. His clan had once ridden Rylax on Draenor, and to once again soar in the sky was an idea that could not be resisted. Once the hook had been set, Deathwing coaxed Zuluhead to the Red Ridge Mountains. The dragon soul was hidden deep beneath the mountains, protected by wards and the red dragon Alexstrasza, untouched for 10,000 years. Dozens of Dragonmaw orcs died against Alexstrasza, unfamiliar as they were with dragons, but they succeeded. Zulahed ordered his clan's greatest warlock, Necros Skullcrusher, to retrieve the dragon soul. Sensing the dark power within, Necros renamed it the Demon Soul. I think we've heard that about 10 times now when it was renamed the Demon Soul. I'm apologizing for these entries being all over the place. Far from the Red Ridge Mountains, Alexstrasza sensed the wards breaking and grew concerned when she heard no word from Alexstrasza. She and several of her red dragons hurried south, though she believed that some mortal had found the disc, and Alexstrasza was currently hunting for it, and that it would be easy to help him retrieve it. In truth, they were heading right into Deathwing's trap. Deathwing taught Necros how to use the demon soul through dreams and visions. With it, the Dragonmaw clan was able to enslave Alexstrasza shortly after the Horde assaulted Khazmodan. He could not use it on the other dragons as he had to focus on her, but by lashing out at Alexstrasza with the disc's power whenever her dragons tried to intervene, Necros was able to get them to do as he ordered. The Dragonmaw took control of the long-abandoned dwarf city Grim Batol in the Twilight Highlands, and forced Alexstrasza's dragons to accompany them by threatening their queen. While the Dragonmaw began to ride their captives as battle mounts, Alexstrasza was imprisoned within Grim Batol and forced to lay eggs as the Dragonmaw could raise loyal dragons from infancy. From afar, Deathwing rejoiced in Alexstrasza's imprisonment. He continued to subtly advise Necros on how best to use the demon soul to control the red dragons. Not only would making the Horde stronger help his plan to restore the Black Dragonflight, he also knew that seeing her children be used as tools for war would make Alexstrasza's heart suffer, and Deathwing would relish every moment of Alexstrasza's torment. Krill, a goblin servant of Deathwing, was sent to infiltrate the Dragonmaw clan and to serve Necros Skullcrusher. Necros ended up being manipulated by Krill into doing Deathwing's bidding. The goblin served as an advisor to Necros, whispering ideas to the orc in order to further Deathwing's aims. Deathwing, posing as Lord Prestor, managed to make himself popular with King Terenas and the kings of the Alliance nations, and for a while had strong influence in the decisions of state. Using subtle magic, he was able to ensnare the minds of the human leaders and force them to agree on granting him the title of King of Alterac. He also managed to trick King Terenas into giving him the hand of his daughter, Kalia Menethil. His ultimate goal was to obtain a high level of power and influence within the Alliance so that he could destroy it from within. Deathwing began his campaign against the Alliance by pitting the kingdoms of Lordaeron, Stromgarde, Gilneas, and Kultiris against the Kirin Tor of Dalaran, who Deathwing considered threats to his new identity. The only one to ever fully uncover the truth about his identity was the dragon mage, Krasus, the mortal form of Corialstraz. However, the Kirin Tor were able to discern that he was a powerful being hiding in a human form and tried to devise a way to stop him. The orcs of the Dragonmaw clan at Grim Batol kept their hold over Alexstrasza, even though the bulk of the Horde had already been defeated. Deathwing tried to frighten the Dragonmaw orcs into believing that the humans were attacking Grim Batol, so that they would move Alexstrasza and her eggs north to Dun Algaz. This left her eggs vulnerable. Deathwing hoped to steal Alexstrasza's latest cache for himself to create a new dragonflight. Though bearing the crimson scales of the Dragon Queen, they would be raised by Deathwing and carry his hatred for the mortal races. Deathwing used his pawns to manipulate the mage Ronan, who had been sent to Grim Batol by Krasus, as a part of a plan to free Alexstrasza. He saved the young mage several times and helped him reach Grim Batol, hoping that his appearance inside the mountain fortress would further convince Necros to flee from it. Though the orcs were convinced and began leaving Grim Batol, Deathwing's attack on the caravan, however, failed. Necros tried to use the demon soul on Deathwing, but was unsuccessful due to the disc having no power over the Black Dragon. He then sent Alexstrasza, old and sick, to stop Deathwing, but he failed and was killed. At the behest of Krasis, the three remaining free aspects, Malygos, Ysera, and Nozdormu, grudgingly decided to come out of their lairs and attack Deathwing. However, due to the power they'd given to the Demon Soul, they were no match for the Black Leviathan. But Ronan was able to steal the Demon Soul from Necros, freeing Alexstrasza in the process. Furthermore, he discovered its weakness and destroyed it, releasing all the powers of the dragons who had given their power 10,000 years earlier. Deathwing was sent retreating with 4 very angry, fully empowered dragon aspects hot on his heels, though he managed to elude them in the end. Lord Prestor vanished when Deathwing was forced to go into hiding, and Deathwing's influence over the nobles disappeared along with him. So this brings us to around the time of World of Warcraft. What happened in our timeline that we're used to in vanilla? Well, Onyxia and Neltharion, offspring of Deathwing and masters of the Black Dragonflight in the absence of their father, have tried to control the world. Onyxia followed in her father's footsteps by taking the Prestor name to attempts to manipulate the Alliance. She posed as a human counselor named Katrana Prestor for the new child King of Stormwind. Neltharion, meanwhile, posed as a human named Lord Victor Nefarious, Lord of the Blackrock Mountain in the Burning Steppes. He was able to enslave the Blackrock clan orcs, who served him on the top of the mountain, the Blackrock Spire, and we heard all about that very recently on the show. I think it was episode 34. While Deathwing was once a benevolent entity, he is now completely evil. He hates all mortal races and wishes to kill them all. He's also utterly insane, most notably shown when he had the Demon Soul. Deathwing was attached to it, such that even when warned by the goblin alchemists who made his first armor that the Demon Soul's energies would kill him if he kept it with him too long, it wasn't enough for him to let go of it, and he was only willing to part with it temporarily when reminded that it would likely be stolen from him if he was dead. In spite of his insanity, Deathwing does display a degree of cunning. Although he hates mortals, he's apparently willing to tolerate them if it can prove of any help in his plans, though inevitably he will do away with them when they've outlived their usefulness. Despite Deathwing's overall loathing of mortals, he has respect for, and perhaps even a fear of, Medivh, stating in The Day of the Dragon that he would never willingly face Medivh in combat, though this might have technically been fear of the portion of Sargeras that was locked inside of Medivh. He viewed Thrall in a similar way later on, when the Twilight Father expressed disbelief that Thrall could triumph. Deathwing made it clear that he planned to take no chances. He also showed genuine loyalty to the old gods, due to his belief that they could free him from his burden. As a young proto-dragon, Neltharion was very much so a lover of combat, and this is something that's shown through the entirety of his time on Azeroth. So that's all the aspects one by one. So just one final little piece on the aspects. The aspects are more than just dragons with different skills and extra powers. When the Titans blessed all of them, they gave them insights and other ways of understanding things. No single dragon was able to defeat one. Although they are parts of a whole and were never meant to be separate, they are also complete unto themselves as well. The Titan's gift is also a burden. When the Titans departed, they said to the aspects, "Unto each of you was given a gift. Unto all of you is given the duty. Their one true duty was to prevent the hour of twilight at all costs." And phew, that's the dragon aspects. And now, let's find out what we thought of them all in That's What We Said. Each lore episode, Countdown to Classics scours the forums for a few quick comments about what we as a community thought of the content or characters that we've just discussed. So, what do we think of the dragon aspects? Well, there was a fun back and forth that I found over at MMO Champion, and the conversation sort of went down the path of, well, my daddy could kick your daddy's ass, as we start with this topic, started by user Velshin, again over at MMO Champion, and the title of the thread was, who do you think was the strongest dragon aspect? And Velshin said this. Who do you think was the strongest dragon aspect, including Neltharion the Earth Warden before becoming Deathwing? And some answers followed. We had things like this from Checking Facts, who says, that depends on what you see as strength. If it's power, Nozdormu was empowered by the strongest Titan, with the most OP level of power, and he was shown his own death to make sure his godlike power wouldn't go over his head. That pretty much guarantees that he's the most powerful. But if it's raw strength, Neltharion was the strongest, physically. If it's about importance, Alexstrasza was the most important, since she was the guardian of life, and there's no meaning to all the others if there's no life on Azeroth. We got another reply from user Mickey Bright Eyes, who says this. It depends on your definition of strongest. The ability to traverse time is certainly a game ender. Get into a fight and poof, vanish to the day of your enemy's birth and slash splat. It's only limited by the moral compass of the user. Beyond that, it depends on what strength you're looking at. In my opinion, in terms of defensiveness, I'd bet Neltharion was the hardiest of the bunch. We had another reply from user Wildmoon, still hanging out at MMO Champion, who says this. I would say Nozdormu, because his personality seems like a lonesome type, and this kind of character is often very strong. Neltharion and Alexstrasza are close. Neltharion seems like a brawling type. I think if it's a contest about who would cause more damage to Azeroth within 5 minutes, then Neltharion wins hands down. His dominion of the earth itself is OP. Malygos and Ysera seem like weaker aspects for some reason. Then we had this final one from Zexar, who says this. I'm going to say it depends. Malygos pre-insanity would likely have been magically the strongest. Neltharion physically so. Alexstrasza may be the highest stamina. Nozdormu, well, like everyone says, he can wipe people from existence pretty easily if time travel grants him that ability. Ysera, though, probably would have my vote for weakest. Now that we've run through all those posts and that little chain of replies over at MMO Champion, the reason I bring that one up is it's always fun to talk about this when we discuss the lore. And obviously it's something that comes up a lot when we talk about things like comic book characters, superheroes, supervillains. Who could kick whose ass? Who's number one? Who's top dog? Batman? Superman? Who's going to take it out? Well, I guess we found out in that movie. But anyway, I digress. In the world of Warcraft, we've got these 5 dragon aspects. Who is the strongest? And obviously all these posters touch on the same thing. Well, that's all in the eye of the beholder. Define strongest. It's so subjective. They've all got pretty cool powers. Now, who do you think is the strongest dragon aspect? Why don't you email the show, feedback@countdowntoclassic.com, and let me know your opinions, and I will likely read it out on a future episode, so please do write to me. Now, we'll go to the next post. And, if you're wondering, by the way, who do I think is the strongest one? Yeah, I'm probably going to go with Deathwing. He looks pretty badass. But I do appreciate the magical time-traveling abilities of Nozdormu, but I more go down to physical strength. So maybe that's my strange definition. But anyway, now we go to the following post, which does take some of the expansion content into account. Now, I know I try to stick vanilla here on Countdown to Classic, but sometimes with some of these lore things, and as you've heard through the Dragon Aspects lore, there's going to be accidentally a few expansion tidbits that do pop into the information. So I do apologize. You can identify what's expansion lore and what's not. And obviously at times I don't have the time to pluck everything out, but I'm sure everyone is also very understanding. But with these posts, I found a great post over at the official forums. And even though it includes expansion stuff, I'm still going to talk about it because I figured it was worth consideration. So we start with user Morthus, who says this, and the title of the thread was Weak Dragon Aspects. And here's what they say. The fall of Ysera reminded me why I think dragon aspects are weak. They are bestowed power by one of the most powerful orders in the universe, and yet they are lolpooned at every corner. The Dragon Queen and supposed most powerful of the aspects is enslaved by a crippled orc. Sure, the demon soul is a powerful artifact, but she does not even put up a fight. In Wrath, a mere necromancer with a powerful sword overran all the dragon sanctuaries without any resistance. Malygos, the Lord of Magic on Azeroth, is out-magicked by a mortal floating city. In Cataclysm, the remaining aspects are slapped around like unruly children by beings that they should rightfully be able to manage, like elemental lords or forgotten ones. And then they're saved by an orc with an affinity for the elements. In the meantime, Kalekos, the new paragon of magic, of the flight that supposedly regulates magic, is taking lessons from Jaina and Khadgar. In Legion, the aspect of nature, a demigod of nature, and the most powerful druid on Azeroth is overpowered by Xavius without any resistance. If Ysera resisted for a while in a cameo, it would have been cool. But no, she immediately becomes his lapdog. The only aspect worth the title is Neltharion. Why do we never see an aspect win any fight, even against enemies that are clearly not in their league? They're arguably the second most powerful beings on Azeroth after the old gods, when they were aspects. They should be in Archimonde's tier of power, or close to it. I mean, Alexstrasza is the embodiment of life, probably almost on par with Anaru, and some ghouls desecrated her shrine in Wrath of the Lich King. She should have been Arthas's most feared enemy, not any mortal alliance. And we get a reply from user Shayless, who says this. Blizz wasted dragon lore. I mean, they turned the most intelligent beings around Azeroth mostly into A. Raid bosses, B. Dungeon bosses, C. Quest objectives. Alexstrasza and Nozdormu are still out there, but hey, it ain't gonna be a problem to corrupt them. End time, huh? Or fight each other. I feel really sorry for all dragons since I'm a huge fan, but for Ysera especially, fighting the Dreamer during a quest is a disgrace. I'm afraid I'll have to skip this quest line on my druid. This wouldn't feel right. So, the reason I read out those two posts is the following. There's actually a little bit of negativity. I mean, I guess the funny thing when I go through these lore episodes, and I guess people are very passionate about the story of the game and the lore and the way in which characters are presented to us as consumers and fans of World of Warcraft. But there is a lot of negativity about the way in which Blizzard handles their characters and their storyline, and it's sometimes hard to find the positive stuff. But, I mean, not that I'm afraid of focusing on the negative, but there is the question of, has Blizzard dropped the ball somewhat? Did they burn or waste these awesome characters, the dragon aspects? We shouldn't complain too much because their origin story that I just read, I think, is freaking awesome. So they've done a really good job in creating these characters. The problem that people have is what they've done with them after they've set them up as these near apparent demigods. They are supposed to be really, really badass. But yes, as we've seen post-vanilla, they seem to come unstuck a fair bit. And people have issues with the ease within which dragon aspects are dispatched by opponents who really don't feel like equals. So, how do you feel about the way in which Blizzard has treated the dragon aspects over the many years of the game? Are you fine with the way their story has developed, or do you think it's kind of a little bit of wacky bullshit? Let me know. Feedback at countdowntoclassic.com. Are you a dragon fan? Most people are. Are you pissed off that something as cool as dragons has not been handled in the correct way? We have another very well-known piece of pop culture that does seem to handle dragons in a pretty cool fashion. Good old Game of Thrones. Could Blizzard learn a trick or two from Georgie Boy? I don't know. You tell me. But we go now to the next thread that I want to highlight, which is this one from Hillian Leach over at the official forums. And they say this, and the thread is titled, "Which dragon aspect is your favorite?" So, here's what Hillian Leach has to say. Just out of simple curiosity, what's your favorite dragon of the aspects? For me, it's Alexstrasza. Aside from not belittling mortals, she's really hot. No pun intended. Okay, well, that's a bit undergraduate. Let's try and find a mature one here in this thread. I'll keep digging. All right, how about this one from user Silpha? Okay, they say this. It's Alexstrasza. 'Cause let's be real, she's hot as shit. I may riot if they kill her off. Okay, well, that's a bit the same as the last one. Common theme here. You know, don't worry about it. Don't worry. I'll find one. I'll find a good one. All right, how about this one? CPT my name. Here's what they say. All right, I'm sure this will be mature. Here we go. Alexstrasza. I still can't tell if it's just the shading or if she doesn't do any landscaping down under. Oh boy. I thought this would be the mature thread. Come on, people. Come on. Let's get back on track. Hang on. I'll keep looking. All right. This one's got some promise. Dread Fury. User Dread Fury says this. It's Alexstrasza, and you know exactly why. I mean, I guess they're referring to the same thing. Surely this thread picks up a bit. Okay, how about this? The Dingleberry. Uh-oh. I don't know if they're going to say something nice. Let's see. Alexstrasza, would you hit that? Oh. Man, these posts are killing me today. Come on, people. Don't we have something to say about her amazing feats or her awesome character? All right. No. Look, we're going to salvage this. We can do this. We can regroup people because here we go. Surely Demon XZ95 will save the day. And Demon XZ95 says, I totally would. Preferably if she's in her humanoid form. What? So, wait. I mean, is it still a maybe if she's in her dragon form? How does that even work? Oh, I mean, my head is starting to hurt. All right, let's go with this one from Lewd Lady. Oh, God, this isn't going to be good. It's Alexstrasza because she made me question my sexuality as a teen. Oh, boy. Oh, man, Alexstrasza is now making people turn. I had no idea the hold that this character had over the community. All right, let's keep going. Let's try one more. I'll give you one last chance, Warcraft fans, to save yourselves with a mature comment. Here we go. How about this one? I'll pick, all right, here we go. Flaccid Gladiator. Oh, come on. Are you kidding me with these usernames? I know this is going to be something bad now. All right, I'll read it out anyway. Considering she shares the same model as Sylvanas and every other blood elf, it's Alexstrasza. I mean, she has porn star looks and she's a big gal with horns that double as handlebars. Oh, that's it. I give up. You've all got your minds in the gutter. And you know what? That kind of superficiality makes me mad. That's it. Roll the anger management music. Each episode, Countdown to Classic brings you some of the angriest posts that I've found through the forums during the week regarding the content that we've just discussed. So again, in addressing the dragon aspects, a lot of it is expansion based. So I'm going to cheat a little bit here and read some good ones out regardless of when in time they were made. And here's the first one from user Avalice over at the official forums, who says this. I mean, really, who has been ploughed more than the dragons? We've killed 4 of the 5 dragonflight leaders. They've lost their powers. They're infertile now, being the last of their kind. Their whelps are being killed right, left and centre. And adult dragons aren't lasting much longer. I mean, what is this? If the Alliance/Horde lost their power, what would happen is that they would seek something else to regain their power, and they would get it. The dragons, however, take the option of lying down to die. There's no will to survive. What a poisoned chalice the Titans gave the dragons. Oh, you can be the world's protectors, but when you do save the world, you can get the fuck out, your powers will be stripped, and you'll be infertile and die out. Thanks for your service. And next we have this post from user Atik, who says this. Okay, folks, not a regular on these forums by any means, stopping by from Wowhead's lore forums to get some opinions from the other side of the fandom. Now over there, we've slowly come to realise that Blizzard have been meta-genociding one of the most developed races in World of Warcraft, that being the dragons. Now, dragons have been one of my favourite species in the World of Warcraft universe, basically since day one. They're so different from typical Dungeon and Dragon style flying loot pinatas. They have a culture, a history, a reason for existing. They help explain parts of the universe around them, and have jobs to do that occasionally have them intersect with players. Not only that, but there are just so many great dragon characters, even if some are dead. Malygos, Azuragos, Ysera, the list can go on for a while. Simply put, they're literally more fleshed out than most of the playable races in the game. I'm looking at you, gnomes. So why do you all think it's Blizzard that's kicked dragons while they're down repeatedly since Cataclysm, taking away their powers, having mortals take over their jobs, making them sterile, removing their immortality? I mean, I'm forced to sit back and watch one of my favourite races in the game be written out without any idea what the writers have against them. And now we have this post from user Nomi, who says this. They keep getting corrupted even though they are the aspects and leaders of their races. Corrupted by Old God, corrupted by Xavius. Can probably use a Jedi mind trick on them too. Give me all your loots, waves hand. Next we have this one from Greybit, who says this. No kidding. Oh look, a red rock. Let me throw it at that dragon. And bang! One dragon taken care of. Really? That's all it took? They should have gone extinct their first year of existence. Next we have this post from Jamestar over at GameFAQs.com, who says this. The Lich King was actively massacring dragons in their own shrines and resurrecting them as frostworms and emberworms. They captured an emerald dragon. Notable former dragons like Sindragosa were flying around causing havoc. The Scourge evacuated and were openly trying to resurrect Galakron a football field away from Wernrest Temple. The dragons barely defended themselves. Also, why is the Scourge ignored, but the instant the Forsaken use the plague at Wrathgate, the red dragons rush over? Limitations of an MMO story and or bad writing. And there was a reply to that one by user Silent Z, the final post for anger management. Was going to post something similar. It is bad writing. Let's not pretend World of Warcraft's writing is overall good, and just settle that certain stories and quests are fantastic, but overall that it's a jumbled mess involving too many cooks, which results in nonsense and contradictions. There's a reason Red Shirt Guy was a thing. Whew, shots fired. I think appeasing Red Shirt Guy is actually pretty tough, okay? So Blizzard's doing fine and the best that they can. But the dragon aspects do seem pretty apathetic, I guess. But anyway, with all that anger out of the way now, it's time for Tidbits. Each lore episode, Countdown to Classic, comes to you with just a few little known tidbits of information regarding things that we've just discussed on the show. Or perhaps you are a mega fan and you already know all of this stuff. But we'll start with this one. Did you know that Blizzard made it a rule of sorts of dragon aspecting that it is impossible to select a new aspect or even try to call a new one as long as the current one lives? Next, the Demon Soul may be a reference to the Demon Core, a 6.2 kilogram mass of plutonium that killed two scientists in separate accidents in 1945 and 1946 at the Los Alamos National Laboratory and was used in an atomic bomb test 5 weeks after the second incident. Like the Demon Soul, the atomic bomb was the most powerful weapon in the world at the time, one that could ultimately lead to a nuclear cataclysm that would see all life destroyed. Next up, with a little bit of information from Warcraft Adventures Lord of the Clans, the cancelled game. Did you know that there was a huge red dragon depicted in that game, being Alexstrasza, as far less kind and life-loving than her World of Warcraft incarnation? In order to storm Durnhold, Thrall had to secure the aid of Alexstrasza and her dragons. He headed to her cave, hidden at Crestfall. During the encounter, she let loose on Thrall with fiery blasts, which he blocked with a special dwarven shield, fortified with Alexstrasza's own scales. Alexstrasza was understandably unwilling to help Thrall, since she still hated the orcs for enslaving her during the Second War. She told Thrall that she would only agree to help him and his orcs if he managed to kill Deathwing, a feat that the young orc eventually managed. In that game, that was cancelled, and so none of that is canon, but interesting to hear nonetheless. Next, we have this one. Did you know that Chromie calls Alexstrasza Ali as a pet name? Isn't that cute? Next up, in the books, Nozdormu puts a lot of emphasis on the letter S, drawing it out like a snake. This is strangely absent in his appearances in-game. Next we have this one. In later expansions, the Lord of the Infinite Dragonflight is named Murozond. Murozond is an anagram of Nozdormu. And then flowing on from that, in further later expansions, in the cinematic where Ysera is corrupted by Xavius, the roar that you hear when she is struck is the same roar as the T-Rex from the movie Jurassic Park. Have a look on YouTube. It's only for a fleeting second, but it is clearly the same sound effect. I wonder if they got legal clearance for that one. Anyway, Next, and finally, I should say, the final tidbit and wrapping up in the show. Did you know that for Neltharion, obviously he's usually referred to as Deathwing by the majority of beings. Only a few mages, night elves and dragons still call him Neltharion. However, over the years, Deathwing has been given many names, including, but not limited to, Aspect of Death, Death Aspect, the Betrayer, the Black Scourge, Blackwing Greatfather, Blood Shadow, the Cataclysm, the Dark One, Devil Presta, Death Incarnate, the Destroyer, the Earthwater, the Great One, Shulwa, the Unmaker of Worlds, the Water of the Land, the Worldbreaker, and Zaxxas. Whoo! Alright, we got through it. And guess what, everyone? That brings us to the close of the episode. And thank you so much for listening to all that wonderful lore about the dragon aspects. And now that we've done all that, I just want to thank the members of the Countdown Council, whom I call every week for input on the show, and maybe they will pick next week's lore episode. We shall see. So shout out to Borzen, Raidmar, Palfurus, and new council member, Rarebit. Welcome to the council. Seven Winters, Tsunami, Wilson Ma, and Velarco. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be the same without your support. And as always, a big thank you to supporters Myrtlebanks and Rarebit, as always. So that's another Countdown to Classic in the books, everyone. Episode 40. Where's my mount? Where is it? Oh shit, wait, I don't have the money for one. Oh, now I gotta go farm. Alright. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I do hope to see you for more episodes of Countdown to Classic through the week. And obviously coming up, we've got the second part of that fantastic WoW economy interview with Party Pooper coming on Wednesday, and then on Friday it should be a trip back to the forums with some interesting topics. We shall be touching on respecking costs in Classic. Should they change it? Changes, no changes, what's going on? And then we'll be touching on a couple of other fun things. I'm still yet to pick a spec that we shall focus on. If you got something you really want to hear about, send it through in the next 24 hours. And then the other one that we wanted to talk about was an interesting topic of whether or not being on a PvP server is the true and authentic and only World of Warcraft experience, or if being on a PvE server can still deliver it, or is it cheating a little bit and you're not really playing the true game. We'll discuss all that on Friday. So stay tuned, everyone. And thank you so much again, and I'll see you then. Bye.